Hey, this is Rob Sparry. In this video, we're going to talk about 10 accessories that we've added to our Honda Pioneer 1000. We've got the Honda roof, the SuperATV flip-up windshield. We have a rear view mirror, some side mirrors, a dual battery with Isolator and Stinger. We have a front light bar. We have some backup lights. We have dome lights. We've got some pull handles. And we've got a surprise for you at the end if you stick around that long. Now with COVID-19, a lot of us have had to make changes to our daily routines, and I know I have. As a musician, I normally play in bands, but I have not been able to play out or play with my friends. So I've had to learn how to be creative in other ways, and one way is to learn how to do videos. This is the first time I've been doing videos, and if you listen to the introduction, that's me playing some original material. If you stay all the way to the end, you'll see me up in the upper left-hand corner jamming out to an original excerpt from my coronavirus funk parody video. So, hope you enjoy. Okay, kids, we know that there are going to be times when our accessory installations are going to be frustrating and there are going to be problems to solve. I tried to give you some tips in this video on how I overcame some of the problems that I faced. You're going to have your own unique challenges. Just try to remember that this is a labor of love. Don't get too frustrated. Life is a gift, and we're lucky to even be working on this kind of stuff. So let's have fun. You have an expensive machine, and it's important to do things right. So let's get started. The roof we chose was the Honda factory. It was $599 from the dealer. That's full retail price. I know I've seen some people post that they got theirs for $435, maybe $485. Even better if you can get it thrown in with your purchase from the dealer. But the laws of supply and demand are probably at work here, especially with COVID having such an impact on the supply and distribution chain, that it's unlikely that you're going to get a deal below factory. The lead time was about 2 weeks, a little bit over that, so I was at least happy with that. We chose the factory roof mainly because of a couple of factors. One is I like the overhang with the front, especially for rain, and also in the back, which you'll see a little bit later, it fits perfectly with the backup lights. I know that some of the third-party roofs are highly recommended and some people really like those, but we went with the factory roof, and we'll show you a little bit more about that. Well, here's our factory roof for the Honda Pioneer 1000. Here we have our roof inspectors, Lucy. Lucy, where are you going? Ethel, she's reading the instructions there, as you can see. The roof did not come with any instructions, but there's a QR code that they show you where you can go to download these instructions. As with most of the Honda manuals, I find that they're not very clear. The illustrations are not clear enough to really tell you where the product is with regard to installing screws and clamps and whatnot. So I'm not really sure what direction this is supposed to be facing, what part of the roof is in this illustration. Well, we're getting ready to put the roof on top of the vehicle. We have all the clamps opened up. They'll probably flap closed when we put it up on top, but we'll deal with that when we get there. All right, our roof is installed. It's nice and tight. There's very little tolerance. You really can't put it on incorrectly because there's not enough space between the rollover protection system, the ROPS, and the roof to put it in the wrong spot. So you pretty much just have to put it in where the factory clamps are and you should be good to go. Let's talk about the windshield. This is the SuperATV. Comes in two pieces. It has a bottom fixed piece. We'll show you a little bit later exactly how this is sealed. The upper piece is in several positions. It can open to allow a little bit of airflow. It can open fully up. It also has really great clarity. It's crystal clear through here. It has a good scratch resistant technology. Some of the others that we researched did not appear to have as good quality scratch resistance. So those were the main reasons we chose this particular model. You can see here on the lower windshield, the fixed part, the seal begins right about on top of the passenger side of the hood cover. It quickly recedes back, follows along the black part of the hood, and when it gets back to the driver's side, gets just about on top again, symmetrically with the other side. That's the appropriate position. All right, when installing the upper part of the windshield, we highly recommend not following the directions. The directions say to install the entire windshield on the brackets and bring the whole assembly over to put it on the vehicle. We think that's a terrible idea that causes a lot of problems. Do not install the lift arm or this bracket connection yet. First, install the bracket to the rollover protection system. There's a little bit of an L shape here. It only goes in one way. This clamp is right next to the roof clamp. That's why you want to put the roof on first. After you've got this bracket on, you can bring the windshield over and connect it to this lift arm and these two bolts. Much easier to do after you've got the brackets installed. Once you've got the windshield installed, these couple of adjustments might need to be modified a little bit to manage the seal. In order to get the seal right, you might have to play around with it a little bit. The position here we show is fully closed. There's a couple other positions. You just pop this guy up and put it in the next position, and it allows for airflow to come in while the windshield is still mostly down. And then, of course, the fully extended is to pop that out and lift it all the way up. And there you go. As far as a rear view mirror goes, it's highly recommended. It's a little unnerving to go in reverse and not have a mirror. I got one that was fairly standard size. It's not that big. It's closer to a regular vehicle mirror. I've seen some that are enormous. I think that would be too distracting for me, but maybe they serve a purpose out in the off-roading world. Obviously, the bracket goes on top of the roll-over protection system. Super easy to put on. Highly recommended. All right, here's one of the side mirrors. Of course, we have one on both sides. This particular model is an up and down type of orientation. I don't like that as well. I don't have the field of vision as if I had gotten the horizontal configuration that would stick out a little further. I think I would have preferred that, even though this doesn't stick out very far, so maybe that's good in terms of off-roading, but I don't like the field of vision that I have with the up and down configuration. The bracket was challenging to install after the windshield was installed. We wanted to wait until after the windshield was installed because the brackets on the windshield, of course, have to be in very specific location. But in hindsight, I can see that we could have installed this bracket, just kept it swung out of the way right here below the pull bar, and then installed the windshield bracket with no problem. So if I had to do it over again, I would install the bracket on the mirrors first. Well, here's one of the side mirror brackets I was talking about earlier. It's not a problem to get this around the rollover protection bar, but was difficult to do when the windshield was already installed. And I also wanted to put this rubber protective piece on. I don't like having the plastic go directly up onto the metal in terms of scratching and whatnot. So we like having this protective piece in, but when you slide it onto the protection bar, it then becomes difficult to move around. So I highly recommend that you get a person to help you, because they can, with two hands, they can keep this separated while you grab your needle nose or whatever, and then you can maneuver this little rubber piece around after the fact and get it positioned properly. Well, here I'll go over the dual battery configuration. I've already done a fairly comprehensive video on how to install and wire the dual battery with the isolator, fuse box, stinger relay, things of that nature. I'm not going to go into detail, but I'll just do a quick summary for those who have not seen that. So here we have our original factory battery that provides electronic power for the transmission and the regular light system, things of that nature. We have the auxiliary battery back here, which is to power all of our auxiliary accessories, and that's highly recommended. We have the isolator, which keeps these two separate so the accessories do not draw on the main battery. We've got a stinger relay, which only is energized when we do key on power. We have a negative bus, a positive bus, and we have our fuse box. Now, when I first did that video, I only had 3 circuits. I'll just mention those briefly. The first one is the 5 amp fuse for the voltmeter. I have a 5 amp fuse for the USB charging port. I have a 15 amp fuse for the cigarette lighter adapter. And I have added these 4. I had said earlier that I would probably never need more than 6, and here I am already at 7, and I haven't even added the winch yet. So on the 4th circuit, I have added the light bar, the rough country light bar. Now that has a relay because it draws a lot more current, and the switch is the low current side of the relay and has this small fuse, but the light itself has a 30 amp fuse in it, and the relay. The backup lights are very low current draw. They do not need a relay. So the backup lights are 1.5 amps each for a total of 3 amps. And the wiring is just 16 gauge wiring. It's no problem, doesn't need a relay. And the next one I have, I'm calling them dome lights. There are actually 2 little rock lights that go up on the ROPS, the rollover protection system. I'll show you those in a bit. These do not need a relay either. I also put them on a dimmer because they're too bright by themselves because they're white. The other circuit I have here is for fun. It's a footwell lighting strips, LED lighting strips, and they can change colors, things of that nature. That was really a challenge to get wired up, and I'll show you how I handled that. And like I said, I've got more spaces here. I'm going to add a winch. I don't know if I'm going to have any other electronics. I don't plan to add a stereo or any of those things, but certainly plenty of space to do that if I change my mind. Well, here we have our rough country LED light bar. It was about $149, 7,200 lumens. It's 20 inches wide and is just a little bit wider than the front bumper here. The bumper tapers off at about 45 degrees. So if I had it to do over again, I'd probably get a 12 or an 18 inch that might fit in one of these smaller spots. This is a good mounting area. I like where it ended up, but the reason that I had a little trouble was because in order to use the side mounting, I had to do a little bit of a modification because I couldn't get these brackets out any further because of the 45-degree angle coming off here. So I used a little L bracket that I picked up from Lowe's or Ace maybe. Had to drill out one of the holes to make it a little bigger for the bolt, and I had to hacksaw cut this off because this piece needs to go right here, and you know, it's a little too long, so once it's cut off, it fits in perfectly. So that was not a terribly difficult fix, but there's another mounting option that Rough Country provides, and it would have allowed me to mount it here on the back. You slide this guy in, and it has teeth, and this specialized bolt with the round, I think it's called an eye bolt, it goes through here, and once it's tightened up, you can adjust it, and these teeth will grab it at wherever you make your adjustment. So that's how you can adjust the angle of it. I didn't use that option because I lost one of the bolts. When I was chasing after my dog, who was chasing after the UPS truck, I had just opened the bag of parts. It was in my hand. The bag, unfortunately, was open and some parts flew out. I didn't know it. It's fall and there are leaves everywhere. I even used a metal detector, but I couldn't find it. So I had to use the side mounting option, and it worked out just fine. Here we have our 2 backup lights. Got these from the Honda Side-by-Side Club. They draw 1.5 amps each, so 3 amps total. That lets us put it directly into the fuse box without needing a relay. You can use 16 gauge wire to add any additional length that you need. The initial design is to plug into the auto backup sensor circuit. There's a harness under the bed near the oil filter, something like that. I did not want it to be part of the auto backup circuit. I don't want the lights to just come on when I'm in reverse. I want them to be on when I turn the switch on at any time, which has been particularly helpful when I have a bed full of supplies and it's dark out and I want the back lights on while I'm in park, and I can really see really well to load and unload, and that's been great. So I have it running all the way to the switch plate and into the fuse box, which means I needed additional wire. So I'm going to show you where I routed the cable and how I got that through. As for wiring up the backup lights, the initial cable, of course, is just tied under the roof to the rollover protection bar and along this side bar. Now, the original design is expecting you to come down and plug into a harness that's under the bed near the oil filter, and I did not want to do that, so I'm going to run my cable. Of course, I run out of cable at some point. I had to splice in some additional 16 gauge wire, and I get to the front, and now I need to protect the wire because I can't figure out a way to put it inside this tube, and there's some flex tubing around it. I have to, of course, wire tie it around the bracket for the windshield, and once I get down into this cavity, it's difficult. I can't really fish the wire that way, or at least I couldn't figure it out. So I had the wire kind of sitting here ready to go, and I come over to this side and I can push my hand in there a ways, but not all the way. And I tried to push some 16 gauge wire through, but it doesn't, it kind of falls apart by the time it gets part way in. It's a little too limp, something I hear from my wife on a regular basis. And so instead I got some 12 gauge wire that's a little stiffer and put it into the form of a hook there, and this is able to fish back a lot easier. And once I get that hook visible back here, I could use a hanger and kind of pull it out. Then I could tie the cable ends to it and pull it right back through. That allows me to pull the slack into the switching area and connect it up to the switch, and of course the switch is then connected to the fuse box. Well, for dome lights, I have these two rock lights, they're actually called if you purchase them. They come in a pair, and they have a rubber seal / grommet that fits the roll bar nicely. The center one here points toward the front, and the one on the back roll bar points toward the front also. I only had them zip tied in. I did not use double-sided tape because I wanted to be able to play around with the angle a little bit after the fact. And oh, my poor doggies are mad at me for keeping them in the prison. I have a dimmer switch here to turn down the brightness. They are so bright when they're on. It was insane. I decided to add this little dimmer switch. I'll show you a little bit more about how I was able to install that in a little bit, and we'll show you how the effect of the dimmer works when we have some darkness. All right, here we have our switch panel out. You can see that I have discrete bundles of wires and tied up separately for neatness and for easy maintenance and identification. I've seen some guys daisy chain from switch to switch where that may be electrically accurate. It's not my style. I want to have discrete runs back to the fuse box. This was an interesting addition. This was a dimmer switch specifically for LED that I use for the dome lights, and it's really great having that. It's a good location for this dimmer. You can just get your finger back there to get that installed. I will post some wiring diagrams up on the Honda Side-by-Side forum. You can't put attachments up on YouTube, so I'll put some links to the Honda Side-by-Side forum so you can get the wiring diagrams. Let's see, next on our list, we have some pull handles. You can see there, got one on each side in the back. And let's see, here in the front, we have our badass Moto Gear logo staring at us. These are handy to pull on when you're getting in and out of the vehicle and going around crazy turns, things like that. So not a bad investment, about 12 bucks. Let's take a look at our footwell lighting. You can see we've got an LED strip down there, and over on the passenger side there's a pair in the back as well. I'm going to show you those in a bit. The LED strip is underneath of the driver side here and has a cable that is zip tied and a splits, one for each side of the cabin. It comes up here. This is not my favorite mounting situation because I'd really prefer these to be behind the firewall and unexposed, but it's a lot of a challenge to get back behind here to do everything behind the firewall and get your hands back there. I decided I'm going to do this on the surface for now, and I'll decide later on if I want to redo it and put it behind. So the switch that came with it has power and color change, and this one is to randomize or make it go to the different beats of music. The original power source for this, they expected it to use a cigarette lighter adapter. I've cut that off because I don't want that in the cigarette lighter. I'm going to tie it directly to the fuse box. So that cable that I cut off right here, I just drilled a little hole into the firewall. It's real easy to get to. You can see how close it is to the switch plate. Real simple to reach your fingers back there and pull that cable through and just splice in a red and black wire to go to your fuse box. This cable is the receiver. It has a little receiver end for the remote control. The remote control is right here. I put a little Velcro on the back so I can just tuck that in right here under the console. Very simple. Here we are on the passenger side of our footwell lighting, and you can see we have our LED strip underneath of the glove box area. The source lead is wire tied underneath here. I would prefer that this be behind this, of course, but as I mentioned earlier, I don't really want to go to the trouble of trying to get into all of that and drill more holes. But now I need to get this to the back set of lights, because they are literally connected in series here. So I drilled another hole just like I did for the switch and poked the lead through. I must have had maybe a foot or two of extra lead there. So when I come around to the passenger front wheel well area, there's a cavity back here. It's real easy to get your hand into. You can even see the flex tubing that the footwell lighting cables are going to go into. I'm going to show you how I routed that in a minute. But this cavity is easy to get your hand into to pull that lead out and do all your wiring connections, you know, where it's easy to get to, then stuff the excess back in the back. Put your hand up in there. You can shove the cable for the rough country LED light bar up in there and pull it through. Then it comes out. You can see I have it routed here. It's away from the radiator. There's a good probably 6 inches between the radiator and this cable. It's routed to the front grille area and kept safe for the front light. All right, so now I'm lying on the ground. Here's the front tire under the passenger wheel well. And here's that plastic guard where we were shoving the wires in from the LED light strip. They come down from behind that, so they're protected so far, but now they're going to be exposed a bit. I couldn't find any way to keep them completely safe, because this is the footwell here, and literally this is right underneath the vehicle. So I put a little flex tubing on this section, and then I was able to feed it into this protective plate and push the wire until I came all the way down and found a hole. There's a hole right here. Once I got it to this hole, I was able to come around from the other side and pull it through. Now that we've run our cable underneath here, we can go to the back. The bed is up. You can put your hand into this little plastic area here and get to the wiring that you've just run through. Now I've pulled all of mine out here. It's all wire tied up now, zip tied up, because I wanted plenty of slack to be able to do future maintenance. I'm going to explain what the different connections are shortly, but now this can be basically shoved back down in here for cosmetic reasons and getting it out of the way. The light bar itself, as you can see, is down here, and the other one, the wiring is run back underneath of this flap. It's all protected because when the bed is down, this is not exposed, and the other LEDs on the other side. Well, it should be getting dark soon, so let's button this thing up and bring her outside and see what the lights look like. Here you can see it's pretty dark out. Even with our accessory turned on, the cabin is pretty dark. I'm going to turn on the dome lights a little bit. So the dome lights, they can be turned off and on completely with this switch, but I also have a dimmer, and that illuminates the cabin a bit with these rock lights in the back. You can't really see them when they're turned on in the video, but when we turn them down a little bit, it's a nice ambient light. It's not too bright. They're too bright without the dimmer switch. That's why I added that. Now we're going to turn on, Brendan, you want to turn on the floor lights? Yeah, there we go. So now we have our footwell lights, and those are pretty awesome. The LED strips that I showed you earlier. He's cycling through a bunch of different colors, and they can be dimmed as well. So that's pretty cool. If you look at the main headlight output, those are regular lights. Now here's the bright lights. So the bright lights, I guess, are really a different angle. They don't seem to be all that bright, but there you go. Now we're going to turn on the light bar. Whoa, that thing really adds a lot of additional light out front. Now we're going to turn it off again, and you can see how much less light there is out front. Now we're going to turn on the back lights. You can see these two back lights really add a tremendous amount of light in the back. This is really great for when you're trying to load and unload supplies from the bed. All right, so all in all, our lighting project is complete and pretty happy with it. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our little tour of 10 accessories for the Honda Pioneer 1000. Maybe someday when I grow up, I'll get a winch and some lifters and snorkels and all that other stuff that I don't understand yet. Until then, that's all I got. See you in the next video.